want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. To my city only to be asked in a double mirrored room at the airport if I had any plan on attacking it. And since I was very young, I've also known that I was spared the worst of it. I was never pressured to be an informant like a classmate of mine. I've never had the word terrorist spray painted on my garage as one of my staff had to endure. My mosque has never been set on fire. To be Muslim in New York is to expect indignity. But indignity does not make us distinct. There are many New Yorkers who face it. Yesterday, Eric Adams said that we can't let our city become Europe. He compared me to violent extremists. The day before that, Curtis Sliwa slandered me from the debate stage when he claimed that I support global jihad. And every day, Super PAC ads imply that I am a terrorist or mock the way I eat.
You're in New York City right now, and I want to just talk and just indulge me on this for a moment because I've been absolutely fascinated by the Zohran Mamdani campaign here and the atmospherics that are there. Just tell us a little bit about what it's like there, because I spoke earlier in the program about this Canal Street cleanup. Now, Canal Street has that huge sort of open-air market of, fake handbags and all that sort of thing. New Yorkers, at least some, seem to be very annoyed that the feds cleaned that up. What is happening on the streets? What's happening in New York that, there's this great sort of engine of capitalism has become enthralled to this Democrat socialist?
Well, James, from the times you've been here, New York City is a mess. It's still a great city. Reasonable claim to be one of the greatest cities in the world, if not the greatest city in the world. It has incredible, arts and entertainment. It has tremendous economic dynamism, still the sort of financial capital of the world. There's all those things going for it. But it's a mess. The city is a mess. The number of homeless people is shocking. The crime, well, not as bad as it was back in the 1990s, and I remember that period well. It's still bad. It's still bad. The streets are filled with rats and the sort of sweet, pungent smell of urine pretty well everywhere. There is, and if it's not urine, it's weed. And as you say, there's crime. There's tremendous number of illegal immigrants, which previous administrations have allowed in to the country and housed in hotels at great expense. It is a mess. It's an enormous mess. And I think one of the, whether it's ICE doing what they were doing, and as you say, remember what you have here is a population that has essentially luxury beliefs, right? These are, for the most part, the people who object to ICE doing their job or law enforcement doing its job generally are people who are not really affected by crime or homelessness or the sheer unpleasantness of the streets. They drive around, they're driven around in limousines or They live in parts of town where they never have to see these things, and they're happy to, of course, continue to vote for liberal leaders like this guy Mamdani, that this socialist leader we're going to get like this guy Mamdani, that we're almost certainly going to get elected in a couple of weeks, and they don't have to do, because they don't actually see the problems. And I think that's the peril with so many of these of cities like New York, London, where I've just been in London. London is much the same. It is. There are many urban problems, but they have a kind of political culture whereby those people, again, who don't really have to face those urban problems, are kind of happy to continue to inflict them on the people who do have to deal with them by continuing to vote in left-wing political leaders.
Yeah, no, look, I lived there in the 1990s myself. I remember how bad it was and how good it was when Rudy Giuliani finally started to clean up the mess. Hey, finally, I just want to talk about a bit of foreign policy here with you, too. And I thought this was very interesting, this intervention that Vice President JD Vance made into a vote in Israel's Knesset where they were talking about annexing the West Bank. Here's a little bit of JD Vance.
When I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
Just quickly here, does this show that there's a bit of impatience with Israel on their side of the peace deal and the ceasefire?
Yeah, there is a little bit. I mean, we've seen this with Trump. Trump was very unhappy with Netanyahu's attack on Doha, on Qatar, the failed attempt to kill Hamas leaders there a few weeks ago. That, I think, accelerated the peace process and certainly pushed Trump towards getting more actively involved and getting that done. He doesn't like this talk. This, to be fair, is these sort of religious parties in Israel, who claim that the West Bank is Judea and Samaria, and they want to reclaim it for Jews and for Israel. And as Vance says, that's not going to happen. There is impatience, but at the same time, there's also an awareness here that, look, the Israelis did agree to that ceasefire. What you're seeing is violence, continued violence, carrying on in Gaza, Palestine, led by Hamas. And so there's continuing support for Israel. There's no question. I think Donald Trump is probably the most pro-Israel leader that the United States has had for at least 50 years. So there's no question that there is that support there. But at the same time, they don't want to see what JD Vance rightly calls stunts like this, which could damage the peace process. Look, above all else, Trump wants there to be peace. He wants the fighting to end. Another notch on his belt in the campaign for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Absolutely.
And anything that makes that more difficult, he's going to oppose.
Absolutely right, Gerard Baker. Thank you so much for your time as always.